I'm joined by Sir Richard Barron for an analysis of exactly where this war is at on day 8. Sir Richard, thank you so much for being with us. So the Russians are still massed various points around Ukraine. This is now, my understanding, two battles, north and south.
So we've seen unfold over the last 10 days or so two separate but synchronised operations. In the south, an operation designed to link Russia to Crimea and to isolate Ukraine from the sea. And in the north, a separate operation focused on the capital, Kiev, and we believe the objective of that is regime change.
Yeah, and let's focus in then, if we can, on that fight for the south. Now, we've just heard from the city of Kherson. We understand it has now changed hands. If we look at the map of the south here, we can see in more detail exactly how the Russians have begun their advance, pushing out from Crimea and taking that strategic city of Kherson. Explain to us why that city is so important and why the city of Mariupol is so interesting at the moment. It's being contested.
So we've seen Russian forces mostly coming out of Crimea, and they have turned both east and west. The group that has turned east is advancing towards the Donbass and is about to link up in Mariupol with Russian forces that have come from Russia. That establishes contiguous territory between Russia and Crimea and isolates Ukraine from the Sea of Azov. In the west, the forces that have now arrived at Kherson, we should remember that Kherson supplies all the fresh water to Crimea, and we assess that that operation will continue round the coast towards Odessa, and we're likely to see unfold an attack on Odessa from the coast and also from the sea using amphibious shipping. If that is successful, it will have separated Ukraine from the sea, and that is a crippling blow to the Ukrainian economy.
Yeah, and obviously that fight for Odessa will be coming, but the fight for Kherson, we heard from Kherson just a moment ago, a gentleman there in his apartment, there is a fight for Mariupol. So Ukrainian forces are still in those areas as we understand it right now.
So we would expect to see two things. One, as the battle unfolds for these cities, some parts of the Ukrainian military to fall back to the next defensive line, which in the west would probably be Odessa, but the local forces to remain, and they'll probably transition from opposing the arrival of Russian forces to mounting a serious insurgency within the confines of that city.
OK, well, that's the fight for the south. Let's take a look at the fight for the north, Sir Richard. And as we've been talking about for the past few days, there is this encroaching Russian convoy that's coming down towards Kiev. It appears to have been bogged down. Let's discuss why that may well have happened. It's been about 3 days that we've known that it's there, and it's still there.
So it's been a surprise that convoy has been stuck for 3 days, but we think we know why this is. First of all, there's been significant Ukrainian opposition to its movement, but much more than that, there have been major logistic failures in the Russian forces, probably a collapse or a fracturing of command and control. But we absolutely need to keep our eye on that convoy because as it unsticks itself, which we must expect it to, it will arrive on the north and west of Kiev and may start to be part of the encirclement. And as you're showing here, more obviously today, Russian forces approaching from the northeast to begin to complete an attempt to encircle Kiev.
Now, that's obviously the fight, the military aspect of this, but there is an unfolding humanitarian aspect that, as Jane has been bringing us from the Polish border, and there have been calls for humanitarian corridors to be brought in. Now, how those humanitarian corridors work, Sir Richard?
So we should look at the humanitarian issues from two directions. First of all, there are a lot of Ukrainians that are trying to move from Ukraine into sanctuary in the European Union, and they require safe passage. And so far, 1 million people have made this, and we're expecting rather more to move. But then for the people who are still in Ukraine, who are being subjected to the effects of war, they find that they are beginning to lose power and water, particularly in the cities, and run out of food and medicine. So that is going to become more and more dire. So one aspect of this is humanitarian aid going to come from the west into these cities, in which case that requires the consent of Russia to allow that humanitarian access, or is Russia going to provide that humanitarian aid as part of its let's feel better about this operation that will probably unfold?
Yes, so anything coming over to the east will need the consent of Russia, and of course that's not
absolutely will
at this moment. OK, so Richard, thank you very much for that analysis.